Today we're taking a look at how Fabfilter Saturn can take your drums from this to this. Stick around to find out how. What's up everybody? I'm Mike, and if this is your first time here, my entire channel is dedicated to helping people level up their mixing skills, so be sure to subscribe so I can help you too. Anyway, I came across this trick a little while back on Eric Valentine's YouTube channel. If you don't know who Eric is, he's recorded and mixed bands like Taking Back Sunday, Good Charlotte, the All-American Rejects, and like a billion others. If you are a fan of Eric's, let me know your favorite of the albums he's worked on in the comments down below. I'm personally a huge fan of the sound of the self-titled Taking Back Sunday record. I think Eric stopped making videos, but he has some incredible content on his channel, so definitely check it out. Not now though, after he finished this video. But anyway, I tried this technique he seemed to be using a lot with Fabfilter Saturn, and wow, it was a night and day difference. My drum sounded bigger, more aggressive, and brighter, yet at the same time smoother and less harsh. If that sounds good to you, let's hop into Pro Tools so you can learn how to do this with your drums. All right, so let's start with our snare because, well, everybody loves snares, right? We've got two tracks here, both samples, as this particular example is using MIDI drums, but this trick works just as well on live drums. By the way, you can grab this sample right here, as well as a kick and a set of toms that go with it for free over at bettermixes.com/drum samples. Or I'll put a link to it in the description down below. But both of these snares are being routed to our snare folder, which is where we're going to be doing this trick today. Let's take a listen to our full drum mix just to see where we're starting here. All right, so it's already sounding pretty good because we're using really killer drum samples, but it could be better. The snare is sounding just a little bit tubby, a little bit pokey, and it could use a little more attitude and grit to help it cut through the mix. So let's solo up our snare and load up an instance of Saturn and see what we can do. If you're not familiar with Saturn, at its core, it's basically a saturation plugin, but it's got a few cool tricks up its sleeves. Let's start by just cranking the drive knob and see what we get. So yeah, it sounded okay with a little bit of drive, but it started falling apart pretty quickly and got kind of muddy and gross and just not so good. I mean, you knew that wasn't going to be it. What kind of trick is that? Just throw a saturator on the snare? Boring. We can do better. Lucky for us, like I said a minute ago, Saturn has some cool tricks up its sleeves. The main one being that it's a multi-band saturator. So I'm just going to go back to the factory default, and I'm going to add a second band to separate the low end of the snare from the rest. I'll just split it right here for now. Somewhere between 400 and 500 hertz usually works well, but we might tweak that later. Then we're going to leave the low end on the default settings, at least for now. Then we're going to bring the drive up on the upper band and see what happens. So as the drive got up to maybe around 65 or 70% or so, it was just starting to sound a little bit nasty. So I stopped there. Now we're going to add a third band to separate the mids from the top end. And once again, now we're going to leave the middle band alone and go to the top band and crank up the drive even farther. And just like last time, I brought it up until it was just starting to sound harsh and then backed it back down a little bit. In this case to about 79%. From here, you can go back and fine tune both the drive amounts as well as the crossover points, but we'll just roll with this for now. So let's do a quick before and after of this plugin. Yeah, that's sounding a lot better. It brightened it up quite a bit, but kind of smoothed out the top end at the same time, and just brought the whole snare forward in the mix, making it sound like the drummer was just smashing the heck out of the snare. It did bring out the ring in the snare quite a bit though, so if we want to reduce that a little bit, Saturn can help us out with that too. If we go to our middle band and solo that up, we can hear that that's where most of our ring is living. I'm going to mess with the crossover points a little bit to really make sure we're getting all that ring in our mid band. There we go. Now that we've focused in on the ringing area, we can go down to this dynamics knob here. If we turn it to the right, it'll reduce the dynamics of this band, basically compressing it. But if we turn it the other way to the left, it does the opposite, making it more dynamic, which on drums basically acts as an expander, but only for our middle band. So it doesn't mess with the sustain in the body of the snare down here. So let's mess with that a bit and see what we can do. And again, that's sounding way better. Let's check out a before and after of just that dynamics knob. So we were really able to get that ring under control there. Although in reality, we would probably want to mess with that in the context of the mix, or at least the context of the full drum mix. So let me just mess with that one more time. So yeah, with the rest of the drums back in, I felt like it could use a little bit more of that ring, so I just brought a little bit back. This dynamics knob is also a major lifesaver when using Saturn on a live snare mic. It'll cut out a lot of the cymbal bleed without messing with the tone of the snare. It seriously works insanely well. You've got to give that one a shot. And speaking of live drums, when I'm working with live drums, I'll usually put Saturn on the individual channels instead of on the folder, as it'll give me a lot more control over how much saturation the top mic gets versus the bottom versus any samples that I might be blending in. But since we just had samples here and they both had like a kind of similar tonality, I just tossed it right on the snare folder just for simplicity's sake. But this trick isn't just for snares. I use this all the time on kicks, toms, overheads, room mics, even occasionally on the drum bus itself. And it's the exact same process for any drum. Just split it into 3 bands. I mean, you can experiment with more or less, but 3 usually works for me. And increase the amount of drive as you get higher in the frequency spectrum. And real quick, let's run through setting this up on our kick without a ton of talking so you can see just how fast this is to set up. So we've got our default setting here. I'm going to split our lows from everything else, somewhere around 400 hertz or so. Then we're going to bring the drive up on the upper band. Then we're going to split our mids and our top end and drive the top end even a little bit farther. And a quick before and after on that. And in like 20 seconds, we just made our kick way better. So let's do another before and after of our whole drum mix this time. I've got Saturn loaded up on pretty much all my drums, on the kick, the snare, the toms, and the overheads. And when Saturn turns on, just listen to how much more forward and more aggressive it gets. Yeah, it just tightens everything up in such a nice way and brings it all forward. And let's toss in bass and guitars because it really matters a lot more in the context of everything else. Yeah, the drums just come alive with that on. The low end tightens up, the mid-range and the top end come forward a little bit, but at the same time, it makes the drums less kind of pokey. It's really, really cool. If you thought this trick was cool, you might want to check out this playlist full of a ton more drum mixing tips. Or if you want to learn more about my other favorite Fabfilter plugin, Pro Q3, check out this video here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.